Good morning, members. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Local Review Body meeting from the 23rd of February. This is now reconvened on the 9th of September. And I will ask the clerk to take us through the procedure and provide an update on the process. Thank you. Claire.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can confirm that this meeting is continuing with the consideration of one notice of review, which was item 4 on the 23rd of February 2021. So item 4 being land to the south of A712, approximately 500 metres to the east of the A712-A713 junction near Balmaclellan. Refusal of planning permission for erection of the workhouse and installation of septic tank and soakaway, information of access and parking area and associated landscaping 200566 FUL. So on the 23rd of February, the LRB went through the papers for the case and determined that they were minded to undertake the further procedure of a site visit due to the size and scale of the development prior to the determination of this case. The site visit took place on Friday the 3rd of February and was attended by the Chair, Andy Ferguson, Jim McComb, the applicant, the agent, independent planning advisor and myself as the clerk. At the site visit, clarity was sought on the location of the workshop, car parking and the turning area. It is for the LRB to determine whether following the site visit they now have sufficient information to determine the review and if any further procedure is required. If the LRB wish, I can remind you of the main issues outlined in February and the options available. That would be helpful. Just to advise, as well as your independent planning advisor, you have a solicitor present today who will act independently of the local review body if you require any specific advice on matters of law. Both Laura Whitelaw and Andrew Robinson are available on Teams. You've got Councillor Ferguson attending on Teams, and in the room we have Councillor McComb and yourself and myself. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Just before we proceed, there's been a concern by one of the members. I think we should just try and clarify that before we proceed. Is that okay, Claire?
Okay, so this is in relation to members that haven't attended the site visit partaking in this reconvened meeting. As stated, the site visit took place on Friday, was attended by 3 of the members that were on the LRB on 23rd of February. 2 members didn't attend the site visit. The established procedure for this council for LRB site visits has always been that only members who attend the site visit can partake in the reconvened meeting. This has always been the case going back to when LRBs were established. In fact, I can recall a case back in 2012 when not all LRB members attended the site visit, and we actually did the site visit twice to make sure that our membership didn't fall from 5 to 3 in what was quite a complex case. There's the regulations and law are actually silent on this, but you do have Solicitor Laura Whitelaw present if you want any further advice.
Thank you, Claire. Are members content to proceed on that basis?
Chair, Ian Crowley, can I speak?
Certainly, Ian.
Thanks, just because obviously this point's actually from myself. I raised it in private, also keen to raise my thoughts in the public domain as well. So I think it was myself that called for the site visit, and we agreed that we would have that. That site visit was had, as I've explained earlier. That's the first. I wasn't consulted on that date when it would be. So first time I realised site visit was taking place was the day after the site visit had taken place. So I've got concerns the fact that I can just the lack of consultation. I was very keen to see the site, the layout, the size, the mass and its location, how it fits in the local area, so on and so forth. So I wasn't able to undertake that. But what's in the regulations are silent, but the council, it sounds like the council took a decision through its standing orders and its procedures to set a process in place to say that for the local review body, it's different for the planning application committee, even though it's the exact same type of decision, for the local review body that we shouldn't actually participate if we haven't been at the site visit. So I've got concerns over that. The fact I wasn't consulted, firstly. I don't know if any other members were consulted, maybe a bit weren't usually, but ultimately, because it was from February and diaries are very tight. But I have got concerns over the fact that if I'm excluded from this meeting today because of that, I'll be quite disappointed. But ultimately, I will take the advice from both the governance officer and Laura as a legal person. I'll take that on board and I will act on that, the advice that I'm given. But I really like to be absolutely clear, is it because of the regulations sit silent and our procedures and standing orders, what weight does that have in regards to me sitting there? Should I or should I not be sitting in this meeting today? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Carruthers. I don't want to get bogged down on procedures and who got notification. I think every member that was on the LRB at that time did get notification that there was a site visit. I can't remember when it was, but it was a wee while back. I can remember that because it was straight in my diary. That's something that you will have to take out with this meeting, take up with governance. I would like to proceed on the basis that those members who didn't turn up at the site visit will not take part in this. We are quoted with 3 other members. So,
Chair, just for the sake of being open and transparent, that one of them questions were posed, certainly, because Claire's already said her bit as governance officer, but just for Laura's point of view, what is her view on this?
I'll certainly ask Laura to come in and just clarify a few points if that helps, but I would like to proceed with the proceedings of the day. Thank you. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. The regulations on local review bodies are the Town and Country Planning Schemes of Delegation and Local Review Procedure Scotland Regulations of 2013. Regulation 12 of that sets out that a local review body can make a decision without any further procedure. It then goes on to stipulate what further procedure can take place if the local review body feels when they first meet that they don't have enough information. Now, I was not in attendance in February, but my understanding is that the body at that time felt that they required a site inspection in order to make their decision. The regulation on site inspections is Regulation 16. It sets out what happens at a site inspection, the notices to be given, but it does not say anything about what happens if councillors are not present at the site inspection. Similarly, there is a circular from the Chief Planner, which is Circular 5 of 2013, and at paragraphs 43 and 44, there is guidance on site visits, but similarly, it is silent about what happens if a councillor does not attend the site visit. In these circumstances, I would advise that we look to our own established procedures, which I understand from the governance officer is that if a councillor is not present at the site visit, they do not participate in the continued hearing.
Thank you, Laura. And on that basis, there is an established procedure. We will move on. So, do members are members content that you have sufficient information to determine this today?
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson. Thanks, Councillor McComb. Do members wish that Claire take us through the main issues? Or are we just happy to proceed?
Just a point of order, Chair. We're not actually in. We'd started deliberations last time, so we didn't have to go over it again, was my understanding. But I'm happy to take advice from either Claire or Laura. Or Laura, yeah, sorry. Too many L's.
I'll bring Claire in on that one, Andy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, you're correct, Councillor Ferguson. You are in the, I guess, mid-item. These points were all gone through in February. It was just as to whether the LRB felt they needed a reminder of what the main issues were, but it's totally a matter for the LRB.
Thank you, Claire. Okay.
Chair,
Yes, Councillor McComb.
given the lengthy period of time which has elapsed I think it would be beneficial if Claire were to run us through the background to the case.
It was really just to go through the main issues of the local review body. There's, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. Do you want to just take us through that, Claire, just to be
Okay, thank you. Just so
safe on that?
everybody's reminded as necessary. The main issues that the LRB may wish to consider are: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan in principle? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2 policies ED2 and ED1 Part B, given the proposed location of the site in open countryside? Is there an overriding need for this business industrial development at this location, which could not be met within or adjacent to an existing settlement? Would the proposal meet the terms of LDP2 policies NE2, OP1 Part C and OP2 by virtue of its design, mass, finishes, proportion, scale and siting? Specifically, would it be out of keeping with its rural countryside location? Would it introduce a discordant and uncharacteristic element into the area? Would it have significant adverse impact on landscape character and scenic interest? Would it fail to contribute positively to the natural environment or sense of place and local distinctiveness? If it is not considered that the proposal accords with the terms of the development plan, are there any set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? And if members are minded to not uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see, if any, attached? And if members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasons for the decision would be required?
Thank you, Claire. I will now open it up to members for discussion.
Can I come in, John?
Yes,
hand up. Yeah.
Andy, yes, please do. I'm looking for hands coming up or speak in the chat, but didn't see any. But please do come in.
Aye, well, there's only 3 of us, isn't there? And I can't see what you're doing in the hall. So I've had a long, hard think about this, and we had a good amount of time on the site. And I would need Andrew to give me a wee hand here and some words here, but I don't see any reason for refusing this, to be honest with you. We're supposed to be encouraging businesses in the countryside. It's well shielded. It's hardly, you can hardly see it from the road. Certainly, it can't be overseen by any houses or other farms. Of course, agricultural land can be, but some distance away for any other house, for example. And I'd be minded to actually to actually grant this, because I just, for the love of me, there on the site on the day, I can't see why it would not be a suitable place for that business to be sited. And particularly, I think it's the bit that we're supposed to be growing the local economy. We're supposed to be helping local businesses. I'd be minded if somebody was to support me to move that we actually award this, we grant this planning permission and overturn the reasonable officer's decision. I'd clearly need a seconder for that, and I'd need some help with that from Andrew about how I could word it, so I'd make sure we get the right reasons for it. But in the main, it's support for business in the community, in the countryside, support the local rural economy, and I can't see any negatives in terms of oversight by any local houses or whatever. And if I'm right here, I don't think there's any objection from anybody, any member of the public from this. So I'd be, as I say, I'd be keen to move that we actually overturn the decision of the officers and award planning permission on this occasion. But again, I'm in your hands, and I'm in the hands of others, because I would need a seconder. Thank you, Chair.
And thanks very much. I mean, obviously, if we are minded to grant this, we would need to consider maybe putting conditions on. I must admit the site visit certainly helped me, because looking at the pictures in the papers way back in February, they're all black and white. They don't really show much detail, and the topography with the overhead view wasn't really sufficient enough. But the site visit certainly helped me, because in relation to the previous application and this application, it was night and day in my view. Right, I don't know if Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Having studied the papers here and also made the site visit, I would say, first of all, there are no neighbours nearby to be annoyed by noise or movement of vehicles. We have a spacious site which is not constricted and offers room for future expansion. It's not that far from the main A713 road. It is fairly accessible. It would be of similar appearance to many agricultural buildings in the locality. The site, as Councillor Ferguson has said, is well hidden by high ground and also some woodland. And the excavation and bounding undoubtedly would help screening. Given the fact that a previous site 268 metres away was previously approved, I would be quite happy to support Councillor Ferguson's motion.
Thanks very much, Jim, for that. So we have a mover and a seconder to approve this. Are there any conditions if we need to get to that point? Because I'm trying to form my words here, sorry. Yeah, if we have a mover and seconder, I don't really have an alternative view. So would we need to put conditions on this once it's approved? Councillor McComb?
I think, Chair, we would have to ensure that the access culvert or bridge was of sufficient strength to handle heavy goods, because I would imagine there'll be a number of lorries and transporters moving across the bridge. So it would have to be of a certain standard. I think it may well be beneficial to plant some bushes on top of the bund, just to give additional screening. Thanks,
Jim. I'll probably bring Andrew in for some planning advice on this. Andrew, are you with us this morning?
I am, Chair, yes. Yes.
Okay, now we've got a proposer and a seconder to approve this application, and Councillor McComb's already reiterated about the burn for the access, which I must admit, when I was on the site visit, I thought that needs to be strengthened. One other thing I'd like to point out is that there was a bank in there or it was cut into the hillside with like a woodland behind that. I'm just wondering, would that need to be, could a condition be put on that to kind of strengthen that as well? So I'll bow to your advice, Andrew.
Yes, Chair. I mean, I was asked about, well, first, I can happily come on to the conditions afterwards. The comments from Councillor Ferguson was asking for some advice on the comments put forward in support of the scheme. I would refer you to the main issues for the local review body to consider. Is there any particular reasons linking to the policies that have been referred to? Are you acknowledging that the scheme is a departure from the plan, but there's the circumstances provided in the reasons given by both Councillor Ferguson and Councillor McComb are sufficient to justify the development in this particular location?
Thanks, Andrew. I'll bring Councillor Ferguson in if he wishes to clarify, and maybe Councillor McComb if he wants to add anything to that. Andy?
Right, thanks, Chair. Andy, thanks for your advice so far, and always willing to accept it. And I think this is coming down to interpretation, isn't it? And when I think the one thing I failed to mention when I was introducing my viewpoint was the lack of really available places in the countryside, and you know, this for me is a good site. I do take the concerns about the bridge going in, but that could be covered by conditions quite very easily, right? So and as for this, any further screening, again, could be covered by conditions, and no doubt you'll advise on that. I just keep coming back here to what I'm saying here is that one of the council aims, of course, is to support new businesses in the rural areas, and I'm just at a loss here as to why this was turned down in the first place. I have to be honest with you. But I'll keep that comment as succinct as that. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it's yes, it does override what the interpretation of the case officer was, and that's what it is. It's not overriding any local policies, because it's what this is all hinging here on the case officer. His interpretation, his or her interpretation of the local policy. So it's not because it's going against policy. It's the interpretation that I'm suggesting here, and my interpretation is that it does meet the local policies, in particular supporting businesses in the rural parts of Dumfries and Galloway. I hope that makes it a bit clearer where I'm coming from, Andrew.
Yes.
Thanks, Andy. Sorry, Andrew, you were coming in there.
Yeah, so essentially, in terms of policy ED2 and ED1B, I would suggest that what you're saying is that you consider that the last paragraph is if policy ED2, just to read what it says. In terms of business development in the rural areas, sites out with may be acceptable where they offer opportunities to diversify an existing business or are related to a site-specific resource or opportunity. And reading the notes, the appointed officer's decision didn't feel that the proposal met that aspect of the policy, so that's why it was refused. The applicant has obviously taken a different view and considers that that site does have a specific resource. So I'm assuming really that's really what you, in order to I would say for this to be a competent decision is to expand as the matters that you've pointed out on why this is a site-specific resource, because the purpose of the policy is to ensure that development is obviously in the right place and that business development is not being developed sporadically in the countryside when it could be located on sites that are considered more sustainable, such as more allocated sites for that use. And on that point, it looks like the only allocated business site is actually in Castle Douglas. And I think the officer's report in paragraph, I think it's 4.7, it doesn't specifically refer to Castle Douglas, but my looking at this seems to be the nearest allocated business and industry site. And the other reason is whether there's any sites adjacent to a settlement, which obviously hasn't been put forward. So in terms of the policy, then, if you consider that is a site, it has a site-specific resource or opportunity for the matters you've raised, then I would advise that would be okay, because that is your interpretation of that, and that, as the local review body, is your right to have that interpretation.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. Can I come back in, John, just for a second? Yeah.
Yeah, Andy.
I think, because I paid very particular attention to paragraph 4.7, and again, that's and that was the case officer's interpretation of the policy, and I think the simple answer is that I disagree with them, and I think that's what the function of the review body is, if I remember my schooling correctly, and my training on this. So I think 4.7 is quite clear there. The case officer is accepting that there's no suitable allocated business or industrial other land within the local settlements. So that's why I think I'm coming to the decision I've come to, because I think we desperately need these types of businesses in the rural, particularly rural stewardship and rural parts of Dumfries and Galloway, and not have them more centred in the big towns and or bigger settlements. So, yeah, because if we'd had earlier these years ago, half of the things we now consider sacred to our region wouldn't be there, because they wouldn't be part of it established. But no, I'm happy with Andrew's advice, and no doubt if he'll guide us through what conditions we need to place in this.
Thank you, Andrew. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, in an ideal world, this is the type of activity which would be placed on a large industrial estate, where there is a substantial buffer between the industrial buildings and nearby housing. It clearly states that in any of the nearby settlements, no such industrial estate exists. The application site has the additional of being only 500 metres from their existing area of operation. So therefore, it would be saving substantially on fuel costs and impact to the environment in terms of carbon dioxide emissions. If there were a site 20 or 30 miles away, that may make this building, this particular business, unviable. So the proximity to the existing focus of operations is an additional advantage.
Thanks very much, Jim. So my understanding is that it fits in well with ED2 and ED1 from the proposer and the seconder. Jim?
I would think, Chair, it is an exception to policy.
Thank you, Jim. So, well, I've no view, so Claire, do you want to just remind the members what the decision was?
Okay, Chair. Just to be clear, I picked up from Councillor Ferguson that he was minded that this application complied with LDP2 policies ED2 and ED1 Part B, rather than be an exception to policy, Councillor McComb, unless I've misheard.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well, Jim.
Would it be possible, Chair, to hear from Councillor Ferguson?
Andy, do you want to come back in just to remind us all?
Yes, I did say it was a matter for interpretation, and the advisor accepted that was the case. It was the view of the case officer, and the case officer, it was his interpretation of the policy. My interpretation is totally different from his, and I thought that it did comply with the relevant parts of the planning policy we have here, and I'm not going to die in the ditch though, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to split hairs about whether it's with policy or against policy. My bottom line here is that this is a development that needs to happen. And just when we're on this, I don't understand why these massive businesses, or these businesses actually, which by and large make things for agricultural use, get stuck in the middle of a big town. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It needs to be closer to where the customers are, and there's a huge dearth of that business in the local rural community, particularly in that part of the world. But I'm not going to die in the ditch about whether it was the case officer's interpretation or what. But I think it does comply with the development parts of the local development plan.
Thank you, Andy. So it's just an interpretation, is my understanding, rather than an exception or a departure. Are you happy with that, Jim?
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy enough with what I've heard from Councillor Ferguson. I think also his remarks highlight the fact that a number of the planning rules and regulations reflect urban areas rather than rural.
Thanks for that, Jim. So, Claire, can you just remind us all what the decision was? And again, just for total clarity, there was other reasons for the officer refusal, which was NE2 OP1 Part C and OP2. Now, there's been a lot of discussion on the site and following the site visit. So I take it you're now minded that this application meets those LBP2 policies. Yes.
Jim?
Yes, I can confirm that, Claire.
Okay, right. Thank you. I just wanted to be clear, make sure it was covered. Okay, so the LRB are agreeing to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application on the grounds that it does comply with the LB2 policies. In particular, they consider that the application does have site-specific resources and opportunity meeting the requirements of ED2 and ED1 Part B, and also that does comply with LDP2 policies NE2, OP1 Part C and OP2. There's been conditions being mentioned which to do with the screening of the site and the bridge access to the site. Is there anything else that the LRB would like added, or is there any thing else that the planning advisor would like to advise as should be covered?
I'll probably bring Andrew back in on a planning point just in case, and then if any other members wish to put any other conditions, we'll take it from there. Andrew, do you want to come back in, please?
Yes, Chair. There was a query about the access. So I've been looking through the consultation response from the council's roads officers, and they've recommended 5 conditions. But I consider, based on what the comments being said, that there's a need for a stronger condition for the access. So my advice would be that you actually attach a condition requesting exact details of the access to be formed, to be submitted for approval and in writing. So I would recommend that as a condition. There's other conditions that the roads officers have recommended, which I'm happy to advise separately if you wish. But the other one you mentioned was about the woodland in the background and the embankment that is at the back of the site. There is an opportunity within a landscaping condition to request compensatory mitigation in terms of woodland to try and strengthen the woodland resource. So there would be, in my opinion, no harm in requesting that through a landscaping condition. And if you specifically want to see the woodland in the background being strengthened, then that can be incorporated into a condition. If there's any other conditions you want me to advise on, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Andrew. Are members content with what Andrew was saying, and do they have any other points they wish to make or conditions they wish to add? Jim?
Can I come in, Chair?
Okay, Andy.
The one thing I was a wee bit worried about, Andrew, at the site, and I think I actually spoke to today's chair about it, is that the cutaway just between the wood and the site was really quite steep, and the soil was not deep, and it's based on granite. It looks like, if it's granite or a hard stone, it looks like some sort of volcanic stone or something like that. Is there a way that we can actually mitigate against the potential for any of the topsoil to be washed off and down and sort of swamp in the building? I think that would be reasonable, just to ensure the integrity and safety of the building and the people who are inside working inside it. I hope it's not too onerous a condition, and I'd obviously like Andrew's advice on that.
Andrew?
Yeah, so essentially, would you be looking for a condition that is looking for protective measures in terms of the embanking? Is that what you're asking for?
I think so, Andrew, because it was quite steep. It wasn't a gentle slope, so it's not an area where it's known to have 90 degrees of sunshine, is it? It's more often raining there than it's anything else. And I'd just be worried that because of the hard rock underneath, you could see it coming through the banking. It might make it easier for a slip. But I appreciate it has to be a reasonable condition, I would suggest. So I'd like your advice on that.
My advice is I'm struggling to see how we could attach a condition in that sense. That the land levels are what they are. It's the nature of the development, and obviously that was one of the reasons for concerns in terms of the topography of the landscape and the reasons for refusal that were given. That the nature of that location has required that development to be to require a lot of excavation. So that's the nature of that, and the only way that could be resolved would be through wider regrading of land levels to soften the appearance, but that would be outside the red line boundary of the site, and you can only condition something really that's within the red line boundary. I'm not sure how I don't think we could attach a condition that's effectively trying to protect the structural integrity of that landscape. It is what it is, and I don't feel that we would be able to enforce such a condition.
Yeah,
Thanks. That's fine. Thanks, Chair. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we should be unreasonable in putting certain conditions. So if members are content, that is the decision from this body. Thank you. Okay, well, thanks for your forbearance, everyone. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Just see that on the chat. Sorry, Andy. Right. Laura, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'm possibly wrong, but it was when there was comments being made about making conditions out with the red line boundary. I haven't had the benefit of being on site as yourselves have, but when there was discussion about the woodland, what my question was, is that the woodland which I can see from the aerial picture, in which case, and I'm looking at page 77 of the pack, and then if you scroll up to the plans at page 73, it looks to me as if the shape of the blue line, which is where the applicant has ownership of, is skirting around that woodland area. And if the woodland that you're saying you're wanting conditions on for the sake of screening is not included within the ownership of the applicant, then as Andrew was saying about other areas, you wouldn't be able to put a condition on that. I may have misunderstood. It could be a different area of trees that you're talking about, but I just felt it was worth raising that point. Thank you, Chair.
Can I get back in, Chair? Yeah. No, I think what both Jim and I were meaning was that the screening that was going to be put in place or is already in place in some areas could benefit from having some bushes or something there just to add to the prevention of air noise pollution outside or visual pollution outside. We were looking at that as an extra that would be reasonable and relatively straightforward and pretty normal in conditions. No, we weren't talking about the actual coppice up on top of the hill, because we weren't looking at that as part of our visit. That's my understanding, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Ferguson.
Andrew, do you wish to add anything?
Yeah, my comments on the woodland, I think, was coming from your comments, Chair, about if that was my understanding, and effectively what the condition I was suggesting could be done is you were of the view that woodland that's adjacent to the eastern part of the site could be strengthened, and there would potentially be an opportunity within the applicant's ownership to have additional planting there if that's what you were seeking. I think the area that Councillors Ferguson and McComb were referring to was that the earth bunding that's to the northwest of the building, which is effectively acting as a screen to the development from the road to the north of the site.
Thanks, Andrew. Jim?
Chair, that is precisely the area I was referring to, and that, as Andrew says, is entirely within the site.
Thank you, Jim. So I think we've kind of established where we are with those. Is everybody content? Andy?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, John. Yeah.
Jim?
Quite content with that, Chair.
Thank you, members. Okay, so that concludes it, I believe. Now, Claire, thank you very much, everyone.
You're reversing the decision of the appointed officer and approving the application, given that it complies with the relevant LDP2 policy, specifically that you consider the site meets the requirements of having a specific resource opportunity, and also the it meets the Council's aim of supporting new business in rural areas. There's a number of conditions being agreed to screening the northwest of the site. The road conditions as laid out by the roads officer. Further road condition requesting details of access be submitted. Landscaping conditions about the woodland in the background being strengthened around the site. And yes, that's all I've got there. There's obviously discussions about the protecting the embanking, but again, they would advise that would not be reasonable. Okay.
Thank you, Claire. I think that just sums it up nicely. And thanks everyone for attending this morning. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Laura, for joining on Teams. Have a nice day.